it's been brought to you before you in most, I think, all the years I've been here and probably before that, just to reconfirm that we're going to re-up the annual membership. And I think we all know what AWC, how they perform for us and how they perform for the cities of the state of Washington. And they give us a voice for in Olympia, and also our insurance. Yes, we have to be a member of this for our insurance or liability insurance. So, is there any questions about this?
Questions from council?
But if there are no questions, I have a request that we put this on the consent agenda, so the next week it'll be lumped in with the payables and the claims and everything, so it's just a one vote for all.
So that's a get your questions out now kind of thing.
Yeah.
We have dues for lots of organizations that we have to be part of, and to me it's reasonable to just put them part of the consent agenda. It's part of normal business. This isn't something that we have to decide whether we want to be part of or not. We're required to be part of it, so let's just do it that way.
Sure. So we can't argue about it next week. You'll figure out. I'll figure out how.
You can bring it out.
Okay, let's council's pleasure on this. Okay. So on the consent agenda.
Part 2. This is Agenda Bill
15-019.
I don't see it on there. I'm on.
SBA?
Yes, the SBA one. Oh, there it is, 15-019. Yes, SBA, and I believe, Mayor Guy, you go to these meetings, correct?
I do.
So, you want to talk to the value of being a member of SBA? Sound City Association?
And I know that Councilmember Jones and Councilmember King have attended this meeting as well. And it's a huge benefit to our city. It gives us a voice on the table for regional issues, and then now being a participant of this and being an active member, I now sit on regional committees as a representative from the Sound Cities Association, which gives us another voice at the table regarding, I sit on the Flood District Advisory Board, as well as the Growth Management Policy Committee as well. So it gives us an opportunity to have another voice, another say what goes on. And I think it's very valuable for our city, and I think we have benefited greatly from it as far as the networking opportunities and the different involvement with the different committees and regional access. I think it's brought them to our city looking at some of the issues that I have concerns about. They've been, we've had King County representative come down and looking at our HESCO saying, how can I help the city and that kind of stuff, and not just dealing with the Army Corps and the other part of King County. We have King County Parks, King County Solid Waste has come down here and looked at things for us because I've mentioned issues that I had. And so just by having that extra voice, I think it really is a benefit to our city. It gives us more vision.
Yeah, this is another thing. I think this is topics for discussion during the budget process. We decide what groups we want to be part of, who we want to pay dues to, and just if we determine then if we want to do it, make it part of the budget, and when the dues come due, we pay in as part of the consent agenda instead of bringing it forward like this. I think that's the best place to do it.
And maybe just a call out that the pay it's on the consent agenda this week.
And I think we could itemize it in the budget process and say, especially for anything that's over, $250, but significant like these $4,000, and aren't very many, just have it listed like we do the fixed assets we're replacing, the vehicles and whatnot, and put it in as a schedule like we do with everything else that's significant in the budget. That'll make it easier for when we do bring it up and say, first meeting of the year we're paying for these, or paying for these in the second quarter, however, so yes, we'll do that.
Any additional questions? What's council? Councilman Garvey? You look like you got a question.
I do, but it's not related to this. It's one of those random things that I want to ask.
You can throw those on the end. What's council's pleasure?
On the consent agenda?
On the consent. Councilmember Steiger, employee benefit policy.
Okay, get a tank there, get everything going.
It's going to be a long night if people settle in.
Okay, I got the policy procedure as well as everybody else did, I believe, in the mail. And I read it over, and it's sure got a lot of gray area in it. I mean, it's got a lot of the donated time leave, it's got a lot of controls, whether the mayor likes you or whether the mayor doesn't, and it's not any real black and white policies, a lot of gray areas. So I think this needs to be totally revisited, and it needs to be, so an employee, when he looks at his employee handbook, this is what benefits I am 100% eligible for, and there's no deviation from it, because right now, the donated leave policy and everything else has, in the past, has been totally, according to this breakdown, has been totally abused by, obviously, but I'm saying approved by whatever mayor it was and whatever, so it has set precedents. So if somebody, we're open lawsuits right here because of previous practice, and then all of a sudden you want to abide by this one, say, oh, no, last year you did this for that employee, and most regular business doesn't have gray areas. You have a policy book. It's just like when I worked for Michelin, there's a policy handbook, the benefits that I was eligible for, whatever. And the branch manager that I worked under, he couldn't change that. I mean, it was company policy, and we can't operate that way either here. I mean, because and I'm not picking on our present mayor. It's putting a burden on whoever the mayor is, and say, oh, well, yeah, well, maybe we better give him 5 more days. But, you know, it just needs to be revisited, written, and it doesn't have to be 15 pages long or whatever this thing is. I mean, some attorney really charges a lot of extra monies here to double talk and so forth, so you can tell it's written by an attorney. So I don't know where that needs to go to, but I think it's probably the governance board.
I was gonna say Public Works Committee.
This is something I brought up last week, is from the last workshop when we discussed it, it was brought to my attention from a member of the audience that we actually have a code, Pacific Municipal Code, regarding our use of benefits, and borrowed shared sick leave is part of it. And as I read it, I realized that the policies, they kind of look the same, but they're not quite the same. That's why last week I recommended that this be taken to the governance committee to be, because typically policies would just come out of the mayor's office. But because we do have a municipal code that addresses it, we need to ensure that our policies match the code. And in some cases, it almost looks more, our policy looks more restrictive than our code, and I don't think we can do that, but I'm not sure. And I think that it is a good place for us to look at, and I think it is on our agenda, I believe. Isn't it, Stacy?
We're working on,
It's a topic for the agenda.
for governance, it's the only thing on the agenda right now.
So is there, are you involved with the governance committee? Because you are kind of our HR contact. So I will ask that you be involved. And also, I know that there's a lot of things that kind of go into that, not only state law, federal law for employment law, but also any of the contracts that we have between different bargaining units. So I think that's why it's important not only to get Amy involved, but also our HR attorney. Yay!
Right.
So
one other thing I did notice is there's what was included was a couple of the different contract languages, which kind of close to the same. They pretty much resemble each other in the 2 bargaining units. And then it looks like our city policy attempted to mirror what the contractual benefits were, so that our non-represented basically got the same. But again, because we put it in code, I'm not sure that we can negotiate a contract that breaks our own law. So we got to make sure that if we change something in contract, that we have to revisit the code. So I don't really agree with benefits being part of our municipal code. sure there was a reason it was put there. It was so that our employees weren't subject to whims of, you know, constant turnover at the administrative level of the city. And, you know, as the city gets bigger, mayor's got more things to focus on than contract benefits. They usually have an HR person that takes care of that, and they work on the contracts, and it doesn't need to be codified. And with the fact that we have it codified, I think we need to look at it, make sure that what we have in code is representative of at least what industry does, and that we're not doing something wrong. And from what I read, it seemed pretty standard, but it doesn't match the language that we were given 2 weeks ago.
Well, the employee handbook is adopted by the council, right? We adopted that last year. Okay. So maybe just in code refer to the employee manual, because even then it wouldn't be at the whim of the mayor if the council adopts the employee policy.
Because then the policy has to be changed, and if we have a say over policies, which I don't know how we want it in the city typically, employee policies come directly from the mayor's office usually. But, you know, in a small city like this, we get some influence, but it doesn't mean that a strong-willed mayor won't say, oh, this is the executive branch, and this is their responsibility, and this is how I'm gonna run the city. So, and if you get one that does that and actually knows how to use the rules to their advantage, so I'm assuming that's probably why it was put in code some time ago. It looked like it was fairly recently it was put in code, but, or updated at least, so.
2000.
When's your meeting, the governance committee meeting?
We're setting that, it's looking like this, but we're going to hear from Josh on, when was he gonna?
Can we,
That's the only day he could do it.
He's not sure because he has to look at his boy's schedule.
can we put this on the second workshop in February on the agenda, just to make sure we don't lose it? And if you're not done, or haven't discussed it, we can keep bumping it out. Just wanna make sure it gets on the agenda so we don't lose it. Or the first one in March, is that, is 17th long enough? You guys should have met once at least.
You might want to give us till March, just so in case we need to meet a second time. We might need to get familiar with it and then digest it, and then come back with some proposals.
So let's put on a second
Can you
workshop
send
in
that
March.
one there?
That gives us a month and a half.
To Amy, and then she'll send it to us. That way we get a chance to really look at it, because I'm not sure which ordinance it is.
If you go to Pacific Municipal, I think it was section 2.
It's chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Yeah.
Well, this is not, come through now.
Okay, so, Councilman Steiger, are you happy with that outcome?
Well, yes, I mean, I'm just trying to, as I stumble onto things that need to be cleaned up, because we have enough lawsuits going now. We don't need to have open gray areas where a good attorney can jump on it and murder us, and a good attorney can jump on this right now and murder us with our past practices, believe me.
Fair enough.
And once we change it, there's no past practice.
Okay, Councilman Steiger, you wanted, Hotel-Motel Committee as well.
Yeah, who's on the advisory committee for the Hotel-Motel?
Councilman Rowland.
Well, okay, I stumbled onto something here, and I'll pass it out to everybody so we've got it.
I can pass it down this way.
Oh, I can walk around here and get some papers, right?
It's a dramatic effect.
He's not working.
Picture?
Thank you.
We always want something for the headlines. You just have to pass that around.
I think Tax Advisory Committee splashed that on the front page.
Well, we're a city over 5,000, so that's not the whole thing.
So, it's made up of citizens, businesses, plus, a council member. And I believe, thinking back when I got into this, or back, I think a couple of years ago, I think we did have one, but I think it kind of fell apart, and I think it's kind of fell between the chairs.
So the last time I remember hearing about this, it was the manager at the hotel who was one of the members,
Yes.
right? And that's the only member, or only business we have.
Linda Hutchison
Oh, okay.
was the second business, myself as a council member, and then there was, Ann Smith as a resident, and I think the other business owner was Tracy Apart.
So are you questioning the membership for the committee now?
Well, yeah, we need committee membership, and I mean, the burden doesn't need to be put on just Stacy. I mean, and these are the things that when, like Pacific Days or something else, that goes to the committee, and the committee gives the advice on whether we will participate in this or whether we won't. I mean,
Money.
So can we reach out to the existing members and make sure that they're aware that they're existing members?
Yes, we can.
So the hotel
But
is
Linda
different.
isn't here anymore.
Yeah, we need some new people.
because Stacy should be meeting with those people.
We actually have had meetings, and nothing has come forward in the last year that I was on the committee. We haven't had anything.
No, but nothing's come from.
Nothing's come forward.
When you had your meetings, who have you met with?
Say we haven't had a meeting because nothing has come
There's been no request.
forward to have a meeting.
Right, the meetings were as needed when there was a request.
And I think the last time was probably 2013 for Pacific Days when you were still on the committee.
Well, I think we need to get an active committee and get some input from them, suggestions, I mean, things we can use it for and things we can do. Let's get the business people, whatever, not just sitting back as needed, have them start to give us some suggestions and stuff, get the community involved in using some of this money and start to get some people interested in where Pacific is, because they're not reading about it every day in the paper now anymore, so.
I didn't want to come in that anyway.
You can change that.
Okay, so we'll find out who the members are and then we'll look at building an active. So can we add that to our next workshop?
So Stacy, you and I can work on that.
Okay.
I think the last thing on our agenda is the executive session. How long do people need?
Maybe 15 minutes.
And this is for,
Collective
I don't see
bargaining.
it on the agenda.
Collective bargaining, it's number 5.
Oh, I didn't even. I see adjourned.
yeah, it's on the executive session. So we'll have an executive session for collective bargaining. How long, Richard?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. We'll take no action because we can't afterwards.